you say not surprising because of the system you're describing that perpetuates itself.
Exactly. And on top of that, Ava's not a safe black woman.
What does that mean?
Like, if she'd be more likely to be nominated if she was more demure, if she kept her opinions to herself, if she didn't make projects having to do with like political or racial issues.
No, and I'm sitting here as a white guy, not wanting that to be true. You really believe that to be true?
I mean, I've seen what's going on in the streets as far as these protests. I mean, this is our reality.
That's our reality. Well, we'll be talking more about that in a moment. Welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. I'm Joe Concha, filling in for Steve today. And joining me now is Andrew Klavan. He's the award-winning mystery novelist and political commentator for PJ Media. He's also the author of a new book, Werewolf Cop, a novel. That comes out on the Ides of March, March 15th. Not sure if that is intentional or not. Hey, Andrew, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Hey, it's a pleasure, Joe. Good to see you.
So you heard that soundbite with Brian Stelter and reliable sources on CNN yesterday saying that if it were a safe black woman directing Selma, that she would have somehow then therefore got a nomination. And I've been talking on shows about that so-called snub as well. I know a lot of movies that would kill to be snubbed by being nominated for Best Picture, as Selma was. So it's interesting to hear the word snub and Selma in the same sentence when it could win the crown jewel, which is Best Picture. You hear that soundbite coming into here, and what are your thoughts regarding the so-called snub around Selma?
You know, it's so easy to accuse the Academy of snubs. You know, I'll be interested to see if American Sniper, one of the best films of the last 10 years, wins any awards with the left-wing Hollywood contingent voting against it. You know, I haven't seen Selma, so I can't judge. It is for certain that there are, you know, there's a huge collection of black talent in the acting community that doesn't get used as often because there are fewer black parts than white parts. We saw them all in The Wire. I hear the acting in Selma is great. You know, I don't know why people were overlooked or if they were overlooked. But to just leap to the conclusion of racism, it's just such a knee-jerk reaction. It's just such a waste of time. The Oscars have become kind of more and more irrelevant as the years go on. To hamstring them with this political correct nonsense just makes it all the worse.
Andrew, I couldn't agree more. On that same network, at least via Twitter, Bill Weir, who apparently was signed a year ago, even though he was on the back of a milk carton somewhere, you could probably find Ed Snowden before you could find Bill Weir. He tweeted out that the Oscars are 93% white. The voters, I should say. They're 76% male, and the average age is 63. In other words, they're like those old farts in the Muppets, hanging out in the balcony. They wouldn't know a good black film if they saw it. Yet last year, 12 Years a Slave not only was nominated, but won Best Picture. And I contend, let me ask you this, and we're only down to about 2 minutes. You know, Steven Spielberg, he was snubbed for Jaws. In other words, he didn't get a Best Director nomination, probably one of the great films of the 20th century. Alfred Hitchcock was snubbed more times than I can count, particularly for Vertigo. Didn't even get Best Picture or Best Director. You could go on and on with all the mistakes that the Oscar voters have made, but everybody now in 2015 seems to bring it back to race, or they bring it back to gender. It can't just be there aren't enough awards to go around where everybody gets a trophy. Am I off on this, or do you agree?
No, I do agree that what the real clash here is between art and commerce. What Hollywood thinks is art are small, politically motivated films. What the people think are art, and the people are almost always right when it comes to the movies, are entertaining, all-American films that tap into the American psyche. The films of John Ford, the films of Hitchcock, even though he was an Englishman, tapped into the Western psyche. You know, and so what you see is people voting for these small films. And because of this, Hollywood has lost its power not to make good films, not to make popular films, but to make good popular films, which it used to do all the time. Now it takes a Clint Eastwood from the old days of Hollywood to produce a film like American Sniper, which is both great and popular. It just doesn't happen that often.
And Andrew, I'm glad you brought up Clint Eastwood, because, by the way, he wasn't nominated for Best Director either. And if you see American Sniper, and you said it's one of the best films of the last 10 years, you would say, wait a minute, why wasn't he nominated? Was it because he's a Republican? In other words, we could do this on and on and on, trying to find motive instead of saying the Oscar voters just screwed up. But Andrew, look, we appreciate you joining us. He is an award-winning mystery novelist. He's also a political commentator for PJ Media. And please go buy this book, out in less than 2 months, Werewolf Cop, a novel. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it here on the Steve Malzberg Show.
A pleasure, Joe. Thanks a lot.
Up next, senior staff reporter for WorldNet Daily and host of Aaron Klein Investigative Radio, Aaron Klein, on the Steve Malzberg Show. Thanks for joining us today on this Martin Luther King Monday on a not so chilly day here in New York City. Back with more in just a moment.